So Leonard Cohen came to Hydra and in fact bought a house on Hydra, within months of setting foot on the island. He came because he'd been attempting to write his first novel in London, which was cold and grey and damp, and he longed to write somewhere in the sun. And he ran into Barbara Rothschild at a poetry party in London. She divorced Victor Rothschild and she was about to be married to the painter Gica, who had an enormous mansion on this island and who allowed artists to stay. And so she advised him to come to Hydra, sort of with the assumption that he would be allowed to stay in this mansion where many, many writers and artists had stayed before. Lawrence Durrell had stayed there, Cyril Connolly had stayed there, Henry Miller had stayed there. And so Leonard Cohen had assumed that he would be invited to stay there. But unfortunately, the housekeeper was rather loyal to the first Mrs. Gica. And so when he dropped the name of Barbara Rothschild, having knocked on the door, he was sort of sent away with a flea in his ear. In fact, it was a rather anti-Semitic flea in his ear, because he was told, we don't need any more Jews here. And the story goes that he put a curse on the place. And in fact, 6 months later, the house burnt to the ground. This is the studio of the House by the Well and the room where Leonard Cohen stayed when he arrived on the island in 1960. And out there on the terrace is where he will have worked on his draft of his first novel, The Favourite Game. You look out and you're aware of how little really has changed, apart from, of course, these wires. But even they, in turn, have inspired a great work of art. I mean, Bird on a Wire by Leonard Cohen. So by the time the famous photographs were taken below this tree, George and Charmian had been on Hydra for 5 years. They came in 1955 and the photographs were taken in 1960. Leonard Cohen had arrived on April the 16th of 1960, and as they are dressed quite warmly, I think these photographs must have been taken towards the winter, maybe October, November. So Leonard Cohen will have been on the island, I guess, six months by this point, and he ended up staying with George and Charmian, and it would have been Charmian who would have helped him find his first place to rent, and George and Charmian will definitely have helped him to find the house that he eventually bought. Lots of people who've seen these photographs of Leonard Cohen playing the guitar, Charmian singing beside him. There's a question that is begged of these photographs is what was the relationship between Charmian and Leonard, because they are very close. And even Charmian's surviving son has looked at these photographs and has wondered the same thing. When I spoke to him, it's something that we talked about. One of the quotes that has lived on from this community has of course been from its most famous member, Leonard Cohen, who talked about this time as a golden period when the lovely Marianne each day would put on his desk a gardenia and a little sandwich. And that's one of the things that Erica struggles with. She isn't sure that she's the sort of woman who wants to put a little sandwich and a gardenia on someone else's desk, because she's beginning to see that it could be her own desk that she puts the gardenia and the sandwich on.
Yes, I have ghosts, not all of them dead, and they dance by the moon, millstones white as the sheet.